Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Al Getler here. As you see, we have a red hot blazing show coming up for you today. Lots of good stuff happening. We're going to be talking careers again today, as we did last Wednesday, and we're going to be doing this coming week as well. So, Dennis Acosta, welcome. Good to see you here today, my friend. Always good to have you here. Hey, some days you wake up and you get those memories from a certain social media platform. And I got one today and I decided to turn it into a LinkedIn post. So share that with you right now. These two little pooches here, the big one, is my daughter's dog. And she's the best. She's Cody. Kind of hard to see her. She's all black. But if you notice right there in that crate is our little Chihuahua. She was born without front legs. And my LinkedIn post today is about thinking big. Look at the size of that dog crate, and dog crates are not a terrible thing in my household. In fact, dogs just, love dog crates if you raise them in it. You don't even close the door. They just like to have that as their space. Well, our little Eleanor was so, taken by the fact that there was so much plush room. She's thinking big. And there's a great book out there about the art of thinking big. And the bottom line is, when you are thinking about something new for yourself, why not think big? Why not go beyond just the normal? And, when you look at something like even an Amazon, right? They started off selling books. Okay. And now look at them. I mean, that's one example, but, maybe you're a plumber and you're thinking one truck is enough, but what if you thought big and want 10 trucks? Just thinking big in your life is a big deal. I think the thing about thinking big is when you think big, there's lots of people that are going to tell you shouldn't think big, and that's not true. Think big. That's what it's all about. Take little Eleanor's role there and think big. Find a bigger dog crate, right? But yeah, so cool. Well, listen, today my guest is the same guest I had here last Wednesday. Katherine Miller is an expert at what she does in helping people with their careers. She does it all. And today we're going to talk about making that career change. When is it time to think about move on up, changing your skill sets, doing whatever? But let's bring Katherine on right now and get the conversation going. Good afternoon, Katherine.
Hi, Al. How are you?
I am doing well. Thank you. How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic.
Good. Glad to hear that. Well, this is a big deal for a couple of reasons. This morning, I did a show with a newspaper out west, and we talked to a local economist. And he's actually an economist for a state employment agency and talking about just where things are going. There are still people who are out of work, lots of people that are out of work.
Lots of people.
Yeah. There are still people who are doing a job that, they held on to because don't want to let go of the job. There's a pandemic going on, but maybe they're not totally happy. And there's probably going to be new opportunities as pent-up demand begins to allow for that. This economist was talking about the fact that a lot of people who are working, people who have had a job throughout the pandemic, are sitting on a pile of cash, and they're going to start spending their money. Things are going to change. So today we want to talk about with you the opportunities about career, about changing, about finding a job, all that kind of thing. So I want to throw the first topic up on the screen here, and let's chat about a job versus a calling. So what does that exactly mean in your circles, Katherine?
So what we talk about when we're talking about people who have a job versus a calling, this is really the spark to the debate about college and whether it's valuable or not, whether we need it. This really all ties together in what you're seeing now as well with people who are holding on to jobs because of the pandemic, because they're worried about the future of the market. Less jobs are available. When is it going to come back? So when we talk to clients about a job versus a calling, people who have a calling are people who never really deviate from a young age. They usually know what they want to do, and they really they never change their mind. They go to college or whatever they need to do for that. They build their lives around the job.
Right.
People who have a job, and when we talk about like just getting a job, are people who are a little more wary of building a life around that. They more want a job to cater to the life that they want. So I always try to weed out, like I try to define personalities that or they are living to work or they are working to live. And those are two, you have to know which camp you fall into before you can find the right job. Because to some people, going to work and doing just kind of something routine every day, they're doing that to make money because they're focusing most of their time and energy on that outside of the career life. Whereas people who have a calling are not doing that. They need their jobs to really fulfill them, to inspire them. They want to wake up every day just with a higher purpose because their job becomes their life, essentially. And so that's a big, you need to know that before you start looking for the right career for you, because you don't want to mix that up or you'll be very miserable.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. Dennis threw up here, in fact, military. And Dennis, say a little more. I mean, are we talking about that as a job, a career, a passion, a calling? I mean, what is that? Because, you certainly spent a good, I know Dennis, I know he spent a good career in the military. So I'd like to see what Dennis says more about that. But, so, when we are looking at, job versus calling, can everybody follow their calling? I mean, what if I'm, I am a pretty big guy and I decide I want to be a prima ballerina and that's my calling. I can work at it, but I guess the reality of the job versus the calling, what say you on that?
So this may be an unpopular opinion, but what say I is that we do have to be realistic. I do believe we've all seen people who there are very large ballerinas. They're not going to be prima ballerinas. They simply don't meet the requirements of that role. And you do have to be realistic. If you hate math, but you love building things and you think, I love building things, I want to be an engineer, and you're so focused on that, but you don't like math, you're not going to be a mechanical engineer. And that's just the reality of it. Now, you can study and study and study and master something, but whether you rise to that level, I think that we do have to look at what our inherent strengths and weaknesses are, where are our personalities, and then we can definitely find jobs for people that are in the industry or that do pursue that hobby or that passion. There's nothing wrong with that. I really wouldn't ever encourage someone to not chase their dreams, but we do encourage people to be realistic about how to get there and whether that is possible given their skill set or any type of hindrance that they have.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean they can't do it or can't be in that realm. There are basketball players who are in wheelchairs, but they are not in the NBA, but they still can enjoy what they do. They can still pursue careers in that realm. So that's my opinion. I know that there are books and there are gurus that say, hey, if you want to be an astronaut and you can't do math, that's fine. You can. I tend to be a little bit more realistic. I tend to be kind of no nonsense. And I'm like, look, you can maybe work for NASA and be around rocket ships or I don't know, build whatever. Maybe there's something. But I do usually fetter my clients' wishes with, hey, let's look at the big picture here.
Yeah.
What do you think? What camp do you fall in?
Well, I mean, first I want to go back to Dennis for a second because, he says he served the military because of the purpose that he had. He felt it was a calling. And then, he does say many military veterans have a difficult time adjusting to civilian life because we lost our purpose. So, that's a pretty important thing to point out that, certainly our military who, thank God for them serving our country. My son-in-law is a proud member of the U.S. military, and I'm proud of him. I'm proud of Dennis, proud of all members of the military. And it is, for some people, it is a calling, absolute calling. And, and they find that their purpose is there. But then again, that ends. So that's an interesting point completely. And Vinny's joining us. Boy, I've got the military and the retired New York City Police Department here today. So that's awesome. So what do I think? I mean, my feeling is this, and I've said this to you before, I think. Someone said to me once, you don't have to be one person. So there are times there are people who go to work for a job that earns the paycheck, but then they have something else they do that's not something that brings in the paycheck. that's a passion. So I think that's completely doable, and that's part of it as well, and something we need to keep in mind. But when it comes to your job, certainly it is nice to figure out what the calling is. So then you get to the next piece of this, which is passion versus money, right? Like I just said, you
Right.
could do something, but maybe not get paid for it, or you can make the money and do the passion off the job, right?
Absolutely. This is a huge issue with entry-level people. You always, it's kind of cliche, you always see like the parents who want the child to do something that might be making a lot of money. The child says, no, I don't want to be a lawyer. I want to be a rock star, and all of that comes into play. Like what we just talked about, is it realistic? Is it something that you can survive? Parents and even mentors, and as we age, as we get a little older, we tend to become a little bit more realistic about the harsh realities of life. And, we have a better view of that. So I find oftentimes questions from entry level candidates tend to be like, hey, look, I have this passion here. Should I pursue that? There's a low chance I'll make enough money. And I always bring them back. We always start our clients with telling me more about how they want their overall life to look, their lifestyle. Yeah. Like, in fact, I love Dennis loves that. He's tuning in. Thank you. And I love the military. I work with a lot of military people because they do.
I know you do. Yeah.
Yeah. They do tend to struggle. Military and law enforcement, even like when they don't have that, that is a very, very much a calling for most of them. Most people do not risk their lives for something that they do not feel strongly about. And I've actually lived on a military base. Like, I'm a big fan of our military. And I do find that when they lose that purpose, it's very disorienting. So then they say, okay, well, what do I do? So you really have to find something that can translate into that in the civilian world, that can really harness that passion that they have for protection, for, things like that, and find careers that are adjacent to it, if you will. But people,
well, it's interesting. Vinny says, my philosophy is that if you like what you do, you never work a day in your life. And I think that's true. And I think, knowing something about Vinny as well, became an NYPD, police officer, but then found a passion in working with dogs, in the canine unit, and excellent at that. And, I think that's an important thing too, that sometimes you can get involved in a job, and then all of a sudden turn it into a career because you find a passion within that. So there's something that you got to be, something's got to be given for that fact that you may start off earning a living, and then finding a career. And I think that's really important.
Absolutely.
And I tend to use the word youngsters in his comment, but yeah, they want to start at the top, unrealistic. Well, I think that is true to some respects. I think millennials got a bad rap on that though, Dennis. I think I had a lot of people, young people that worked for me and my teams over the years, and they knew they had no aspirations that they were going to do my job, but they certainly were a lot more bold and asking for help and steps to move in that direction. And that I encourage. So I think that's great. So we tapped into two things here. We said, job versus calling. Can you figure out what that is? Passion versus money. Like, you can decide, okay, it's more important to me to work in something that I'm passionate about, or it's more important for me to make the money,
absolutely,
and work on the passion, somewhere off to the side. But I know I have used instruments in the past, Katherine, and I know that not every hiring person, career coach, HR person feels the same way about the various types that there are. But, when it comes to finding a calling, finding a passion, and combining that with a career, one opportunity is to do some personality testing. So tell me what you think about personality tests, how they're applied, and how they help people figure out what their next career move is.
So I think, again, this is actually a pretty highly charged and divisive area of psychology, because there's the camp that says, look, they're all useless. There's the camp that says, no, they're all useless except for the one we developed, which is 99% accurate, and it's highly usable. And then poor HR, I feel so bad for HR and recruiters who are being sold all of these things, like this test is best, this is best, and really they don't have of a very deep knowledge of the personality testing. So my view is that I fall in the middle of the road here. I'm a very realistic person, and the fact is, this is an area that I studied a lot in graduate school. I love personality tests. I'm going to admit that right now. I love them, but I would never ever use any personality test that is not, has to be administered by a licensed psychologist. I would not use that to make a hiring decision or to make a career decision. And the reason for that is that no matter how much the company trying to sell it to you says it's validated, it's scientifically, they're not peer reviewed. They're not things that you should stake your life on or somebody's career on. But what they are very valuable for, and what I tend to use them for, is helping people who do not have great insight or really haven't been able to dig down and see, where do my priorities lie? Where, what do I gravitate toward? What do I like behaviorally? How, a little bit more about themselves. Some people are not very insightful, and that's okay. That's just different personalities. But these tests help at least that person and the person such as myself, like a coach or, an HR guy, to bring out some relevant questions that then determine whether you will like certain things. Again, like maybe, like Dennis, in the military. So a personality test might very well ask a question that elicits a response about, say, bravery or fear of death.
Yeah.
That
and he
is
also says that
important to
the VA uses that for vocational rehab when you leave the military. So I mean, that's helpful.
Yeah, it is. Well, and it definitely gives you insight as to kind of broad categories. It is not something I say is useless, but it's not meant to be used by itself. You don't get this report and it says, this is what you should do. You should be a pilot. And then you will love being a pilot no matter what.
Right.
We're all individuals.
That's a career. So that's a career test, right? Where it helps you find a career. What about should I throw out my Myers-Briggs ENTJ? Do I not listen to that? Do I throw out my disc that says I'm a connector? I mean, where do you, I'm not, this is personal opinion, but do those things have value in those types of, atmospheres, especially as it relates to job searches, careers?
I'm going to be honest. I love Myers-Briggs, and I know so many of my colleagues do not, but I do.
Why don't they like Myers-Briggs?
They don't, because there are a couple of different personality theories. The big 5 personality traits are the ones most researched. And I know that I like Myers-Briggs because I do find that in a general sense, the clusters make sense to me and I understand it intuitively. A lot of people do not, because they say, okay, there's just no validity to it. People's answers can change. It is very subjective. The questions can be a bit leading. So though, as a professional, know that, right? So what I'm using it for really is that tool that if somebody says, hey, I'm a thinking personality, then I at least know the way that I need to communicate with them, or the way that they are telling me and they believe that they communicate best. DISC, same thing. Now, DISC, a lot of people think that there's one DISC test, and there are actually multiple DISC tests because it was not properly done with intellectual property. So anyone can make a DISC test. Anyone can give you a DISC test. You've gotten them. Are they valid? Now, if you answered it and you read it, and you got your thing and you said, you know what, I do behave that way, then absolutely. Why would you not use that? You've learned something about yourself. If you saw something that did not describe you and you said, you know what, I don't make decisions that way, then you don't, I mean, know yourself.
So you're saying they're kind of guides that way,
It's a guide. They really are guides, and they're tools to open up dialogue with people that may not be comfortable talking about themselves, or they may not know a lot about themselves. Not everybody sits around like my personality type does sit around a lot, and we diagnose, we think about everything, but not everybody does that. And so that is a great tool for you to use. It can open conversations. You can talk with it about other people. It's fun. And people love discussing that, right? Like if you get into an interview or you are looking into jobs, you can say, hey, like what personality types do you think work well here? And they will start describing characteristics of people that have succeeded. And then you can decide then if you have those. So it's a tool that can be used, but I think it should not be given unnecessary weight as far as like eliminating. I wouldn't eliminate someone based on that because it is not strong enough or valid enough, I think, to say, no, you can't have this IT job because I didn't like your Myers-Briggs personality. Like that is not something that I would do. And I do see that happen, and that's unfortunate, I think.
Yeah, it's interesting too. And I'm looking, I actually grabbed a file folder right out of my desk drawer. I mean, I have my Myers-Briggs, and I'm kind of shocked to find the date, August 2004. So my question too is, I was an ENTJ back then. I wondered today, what is your, this became all about me for a second, but
that's okay.
If I took it again, could it change? Would it change?
I have seen, what the research has shown is that people's, especially in Myers-Briggs, because there's 16 types and you can answer a few questions differently as you grow and it will change a little bit. But what I have not seen and what I haven't really seen in the research or the studies is where people will take it one day and be on one end of the spectrum where like, oh, I'm very much introverted and thinking, and then take it another day and not get that at all unless they are trying, to mess with the results. Right. Unless they're not being honest. But if you took it, it's very possible. Maybe the J and the P might kind of go around depending on how much you like order and how much you like concrete decisions. And that may change as you grow older, but that's just your preference.
Right.
But again, that's why we're using it. We're using it to see our preferences, our thought processes, and open the door for that exploration into our careers. So I don't think you're going to switch from an E all the way over to an I, but like an introvert, from an extrovert to an introvert. But one of the reasons that I would not use this test to eliminate something is that I myself am actually very introverted, but one would not think that when they meet me, nobody believes that.
Yeah.
But it's because there are skills. I was in sales for a little while. I really hated it, but I learned the skills of communication, got comfortable around a camera, right? So those are skills. Skills can be learned. And but despite the fact that I'm an introvert now, I get tired at the end of the day after doing this. It's kind of exhausting.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. And extroverts might get some energy from it. But just because I'm introverted doesn't mean I'd be bad in a sales job. I've learned it. I'm great. So in that sense, I would maybe discuss it with someone, but I wouldn't want to exclude anybody because of it. I feel like it would make too broad of a generalization.
Yeah. One question from Dennis, do your values weigh on your answers? And I, would have to assume that your whole person weighs on your answers, right?
Yes. And values do. Yes, Dennis, they do very much weigh on your answers because a lot of these, one of the problems with it is that it is a little leading. So some of the questions are going to be asking more about values as opposed to behaviors or certain traits that are inherent. So your values absolutely do matter, but your values matter very much in your career too. So that's great. You kind of want that, you really do. Like for Dennis himself, let's say Dennis was not afraid of bullets, but he absolutely did not care about protecting other people. Right? That's a value. Other people's lives just weren't that important to him, or they weren't. That would matter if he went into the military because they would ask him to put his life on the line for other people. Right. And that would be a huge problem. So I think that is really, that's definitely a big factor. And I'm glad I'm glad that bias is there because it's useful for me as a career coach.
Absolutely. All right. So let's reel this in a little bit. I feel like we went off a little bit on a tangent. I want to switch careers. I have decided that I need to find, let's take it from I think the most typical position. Obviously the two most typical is I don't have a job. I need a job. Others, I have a job. I want a different job. Okay. So, we're now figuring out, am I doing it for the money? Am I doing it for the passion? Sometimes socioeconomically, people don't have a choice. They are going from job to job. But I think oftentimes too, in that case, that's not thought out well enough, or we're not given them permission to say, I deserve to find a job that I'm happy in. There's all of that, but just basically, I mean, where do I begin to start looking at either a change in jobs or a change in careers?
I think that the most important factor in looking when you want to change careers, especially if it's through industries, is through informational interviews. I would say that that is by far the best. Now, that assumes, as we've said, that you've already looked at your lifestyle as that has changed over the years, or, you know, whatever you need to accommodate in your life. First, you look at that, you figure out, okay, this career lifestyle, I think, matches this. You know, you wouldn't want to be a surgeon if you have 5 kids at home and you want to spend 20 hours a day with them. That's not going to match. But let's say you found one that matched. I would say the informational interviews with people who are already in that field are gold. They're just gold because they can give you an honest appraisal of it. You can look up all the data you want, but you have to talk to people in that career and say, what about this is terrible? Because everybody wants to tell you what's great, but you need to know if you can handle the terrible, because your terrible and my terrible are two very different things.
But I'm going to back you up a little bit. Though. You know, you use the term informational interview, informational. What's the term you used, Dan? I want to get
informational interview.
Yeah, informational. So, yeah, I don't know what that is. I mean, I know what it is, but you know, tell everybody what an informational interview is.
An informational interview is typically something like a chat over coffee that you invite someone to who is in a position that you either want to be in or a career you want to be in, and you do an introduction and let them know, hey, look, I've really been following your career or your posts. I like what I'm seeing, and I'm very interested in learning more about this industry. Would you mind meeting with me for a few minutes? And always, of course, always go to them. Always, like, you never ask someone to come to you. You always go to them, bring them something, a little coffee, let them know it's not going to take that much time. We're talking 10 to 15 minutes where you're just trying to get a view of it. If it's a friend or a close network, then yes, they might spend much more time with you. That's different, but just kind of a warm reach out to someone that you've seen on LinkedIn. That's what an informational interview is. And it is strictly, you don't bring your resume. You do not ask them for a job. That is not what this is. This is information gathering. This is
although you do bring a resume with you. I mean, you just
but you
don't slap it on the table when you walk in the room.
Exactly. Yeah. Unless they were to ask you for it, you do not introduce it. This is not you pitching to get a job there. This is you finding out more about either the company, the role, you know, what it takes. It's not, it needs to be just very casual. If it's not, that doesn't go over very well usually.
No, I get it. And I'll tell you 2 quick stories about the informational interview.
Absolutely.
You know, I was part of a company that got acquired, and eventually the management team, you know, was all, you know, told thanks for your service and sent on our way. And I called 2 or 3 people. I was living in Ohio at the time, called some people back east in New York, set up informational interviews like this. Literally, I mean, I did have I had a portfolio to take notes, and I had resumes in there. And in both those cases, they turned into job offers. One instantaneously, and literally I made appointments for 15 minutes. And with that guy, I was there for the whole day. And before I left, was offered a job, and I unfortunately I turned it down because geographically, you know, he wanted me to go to a place we just weren't willing to go. And then the second one was years later, like 2-3 years later, with contacts in between.
Right.
I was offered a job that I did take with that company. And it's just kind of interesting. You know, I didn't discover the power of the informational interview. And I must have read it somewhere back then, but it is really, really fascinating how it works. But it's the same for, you know, a plumber. You know, if you're interested in plumbing, then call the plumber and have a sit down. And maybe if you have, a fire in the belly that someone sees, they're going to take a vested interest in your career and move it forward. In fact, it's interesting. I was talking to a guy just before who's going to make a change and wants to think about working, not for a job, not a career, but with a company that my daughter worked with. And, you know, he's going to do an informational interview with her. She doesn't work there anymore, but at least she's going to gather, he's going to gather some information from her, you know, and I like this. Write all your questions down, Dennis. It's so true. One of my favorite books up on my shelf is a book on asking questions when you are the candidate for an interview, you know, and this comes back, right, Katherine? You have to have a curiosity. So how do people come up with questions for an informational interview in your thoughts?
So the best questions in informational interviews, you do not want to ask a question that you can Google the answer to. That is really important. You are not going there to ask them questions about what do you do? What does this job do? Like if you can Google it, then you shouldn't ask that question because it's a waste of the other person's time. And you want to be respectful of that. So you really want to ask deeper questions. And I always advise clients to focus on the person that you're talking to. Ask them about their experiences. Ask them, you can even introduce the personality. What types of personalities do you run into most often? What are some of the character traits that make them succeed? And what would you have done differently if you had started from scratch? Or maybe you may not have that expertise. Let's say they're in marketing and they have a degree in marketing, but you do not, but you have a couple classes. You can kind of introduce that. You really want to make this a personal interaction, and you want to make this pleasant for them and for you, because they're just volunteering their time. They're not promising you.
No doubt.
But so often they do exactly like what you've experienced, where either it will become a referral where they say, look, this person really is excited about this. They've done a little research about the company, because you just don't want to use them as Google. Make those questions that you really are curious about, that would make you not move there. If there's relocation like you came up with, best to know that when you start out, right?
Absolutely.
You've got to know your priorities and talk to them about like, hey, this is kind of how I envision the day-to-day. Is that what the day-to-day is? Like, is it like that? What's the most exciting part of it? Get them excited with you, but definitely don't ask them anything too general. You don't want to do that. That's rude.
No, but to the point, and so Dennis, great question. To the point, I mean, there's always a resource for everything, right? And this is the book that I'm talking about. 201 best questions to ask on your interview. I mean, you don't even need to come up with them yourself. There, and I have the author's names covered. Sorry, John. John Cater, is the author of this book. You can get it on Amazon. And you'll notice, by the way, there's some bookmarks in there because I have used this book time and time again. I don't know what edition this is, but there are probably new editions. You got to just look for your resources. They are absolutely out there. So great question, or great point that you made, Dennis. That's right. So let me ask another question that switches to another topic that we wanted to talk about, which was a concept you introduced me to, Katherine. And it's this term of encore careers. And what does that mean? How does it work?
I love your enthusiasm about that phrase. I love that I could introduce you to a phrase. I did not coin it. I'm sad to say, but basically what it is when it's careers that we embark on in our retirement years, or when people expect us to retire. So then again, a lot of your issues that you had earlier on in your career that we were talking about are a little flipped, the passion versus money. Typically, these are not careers where they care at this point about money. Money's nice, but it's not usually the driving motivator there. So they can more pursue their passion. And that's actually something to consider when you're in your early career and you're thinking, okay, should I be in a rock band? You also have to ask yourself, okay, can I do that later as well? So can I make the money now to allow me to spend the years that I will have? We're so much healthier as older people now. We are living so much longer. You might want to make that your second career. So that's actually something that we kind of consider, is where in your life does this fit? Because our lives are no longer as linear as they used to be, where we graduated, we went to work, we retired, we died. Like, it just happens that way. Now there are so many pivots and so many changes, and people don't have to live that way anymore. So that's something to consider. So in your encore career is basically what you want to do with your retirement years when you don't want to retire.
Well, I mean, I think there's also two things that contribute to that, right? I'm not my dad at my age.
Right.
Flat out. I'm not. I mean, no knock on my dad, but first of all, he was a World War II guy. Those people lived an awful lot of life in the first, in the earlier part of their lives. And so, whatever. But, I have no intentions on slowing down. It's not something I'm interested in at all. I think I would go cuckoo bananas. But there's another financial aspect of this for people, and that is Social Security. Now, when you wait until you're 70, it's a one-armed bandit. You get a lot more money for waiting till later on in life to collect. So if someone's 65 and she or he has a lot more fire left in the belly and always wanted to do something, or they've had a high pressure career and they would like to do the next 5 years, greeting people at Disney World. I mean, have at it, I mean, that's awesome. And it's an encore career. So I think it's a really great concept. And Dennis, has joined us here, and his encore career is just the best. He was this military guy in the Air Force. Now he's making puppets. I
love his puppets. I
and
love
he's
them.
so talented. He's really, really talented. So, wrapping this up, Katherine, we are looking at career changes. There's the old AB list too, right? Things I like, things I don't like, or, the list of things we want. There's lots of advice out there. If you can just boil it down here as we bring things to a close. I am looking for a change in careers. I am looking for a change in jobs. Give me the top 3 to 5 things I need to be thinking about, and then we'll let you go.
All right. The top 3 things that I think you should be thinking about, or your skill set, for sure, your skill set and your willingness to go and get the education or the certifications required to do that. The other thing that you need to think about is your lifestyle. Are you living to work? Is this your calling? Are you working just to live, to have fun on the weekends? Think about your lifestyle and choose your career based around that. And the next thing that you need to think of is look at the big picture. Look at the big picture of your life. Is the passion something that you would rather pursue later? Because some people find that when they do follow their passion to work, it becomes not their passion anymore because they don't want to do it full time. So that's definitely a consideration. The pursuing your passion is definitely something to consider, and definitely consider what your life will look like later on, how long you want to be working. You've hit that button again.
We did it again. We went through some of the things to think about in our career. What are we going to talk about next week?
Next week, I believe we are discussing ageism. Is that where we're at next week?
Yeah. Well, no, You tell me, you're the boss, but I mean,
that's where we're at next week.
And there's 2 ends of the spectrum on that one too, right? There's not having enough experience, but being told that you can't have the job unless you have it. Right. So how do you get experience for a job that requires experience, and what does that even mean? Obviously you don't want to be the CEO of the company, but if you're looking at an entry-level job and it says you need 5 years experience, it's kind of like what? Wait a minute. How do I do entry level and get 5 years experience?
Right.
That's ageism in one sense. And then of course there is somebody who, might have a little snow on the roof there that's applying for something they're very capable of doing. One of the favorite movies in this household is the movie The Intern. Have you ever seen it before?
Yeah, I have.
Yeah, Robert De Niro and Anne Hathaway. It's just a fabulous, fabulous movie. Everybody's assignment is to watch that movie between now and next week. It's just a great movie. And the subject of ageism is definitely a part of it. And it really, it's kind of glaring, but it's really, really well done. And it's a great movie. Well, Katherine Miller, if someone wants to reach out to you, how do they do that?
They can reach out to me on LinkedIn. They can visit my website, or LinkedIn is really the best way to do it. I'm on there a lot. So you DM me and I'll answer.
It is flat out Katherine Miller, career transition expert.
That's right.
That is exactly how it appears on the screen when you find you on LinkedIn. So that way they're going to know it's you. Besides the picture, they're going to know it's you, that it says that right there. Well, we're going to see you again next Wednesday. I'm going to have you head backstage.
Okay.
And I'll say a proper goodbye in a minute. But for now, we'll see you next week. Thanks, Katherine.
See you next week.
So, Dennis, has been a steady viewer of my live stream effort here. And I keep talking about how he is just an expert at what he does now, which just kind of happened. So I thought maybe I jumped up and grabbed something. This was a surprise. It ended up in my mailbox one day. Yes, how are you there? Good to see you. Hello there, Charlie. Good to see you. What's going on? Well, we're talking about Dennis Acosta. I like him. Yeah, he's a good man, isn't he? He certainly is. Yeah. This is just a beautiful, beautiful puppet Dennis built for me. Yeah. It's based on a design that a friend of ours made many, many years ago. But Dennis built that whole thing. I mean, look at that. It's just incredible work. It's the cutest little guy. Thank you. You're welcome. Yeah. And Dennis does some other work as well, too. I'll have to bring that out some other time and show that to everybody. You'll have to do it. I will have to do it. Yeah, yeah. Well, listen, I'm going to let you go. Yeah, because we're going to let the audience go. Thank you all for being here today on Al Getler Live. It's really my pleasure to bring guests like Katherine to you 3 days a week in the middle of the week. Good stuff. Tomorrow, we have Patrick Tinney coming to talk to us. And Patrick is going to discuss the art of negotiation. So if you find that job, you find that career, and you need to negotiate it, he's going to be here to help you negotiate. With that, thank you all very much for being here today. I appreciate it. I'm Al Getler. I'm back tomorrow here on Al Getler Live. Take care.